Welcome back, 338. Here we go. So when we do film analysis, just like when we do literary analysis, we start with what is the message, and then we try to show others how we got there. How did the text get us to that message? In earlier lessons, we practiced close reading written texts, language, looking at the connotations of words. Today, we're going to continue practicing close reading, but we're going to work on close reading images as well as words.
Images? Why, like my ruby slippers?
Yes, exactly like those.
Or like the yellow brick road? Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the
Yes,
yellow brick
exactly.
road.
Just like that, Dorothy. You've got it. Visual information, like ruby slippers or a yellow brick road, has denotative meaning, or it has a denotation, which is the dictionary definition or the literal meaning. And it also has connotations, just like words. Connotations are the associative meanings beyond the dictionary definition or beyond the literal. They're the emotions and feelings associated with the words, right? And visual information has this in the exact same way that written words have it. There are positive and negative associations with visual images as well. For example, if we think about colors, colors have both positive and negative connotations. For example, Dorothy, what does the word yellow usually connote?
Why, yellow reminds me of the sun on a bright day in Kansas.
Yes, great. That's a positive connotation with yellow, like bright, sunny, happiness. A negative connotation might be that yellow is associated with being like overly bright or intense or over the top.
Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue.
Yes, that's a good one, Dorothy. Blue is often associated with the sky, right? Quite literally, the sky is actually blue. But blue sky goes beyond that literal meaning of the sky is actually, blue today as opposed to gray or some other color. Blue skies connotes or has this associative meaning, this connotative meaning of that things are going well, right? Things are good and happy and looking up and looking bright. It's blue skies ahead, right? Everything's going to be fine. Whereas gray skies or stormy weather might suggest that things aren't going as well. They may connote something like sadness or like trouble in a relationship. So they're going to have the literal meaning of like storm is, droplets of water falling down from the sky, but it also has this associative meaning as well visually. So take a minute to think about some of the other colors, right? What does the color white usually connote? What are some positive associations with white? What are some negative associations with white? What about the color red, like Dorothy's ruby slippers? What does that connote? What's associated with red? What comes to your mind when you think of red? Good and bad. In film, there are colors on the screen, but also colors in the lighting, right? There might be a cool or blue filter, or there might be a warm or red, yellow one. And I'll show you some of those in a minute when I show a little clip I'm going to show. Besides colors, some other things that have connotations visually are shapes. Let's think about some of the connotations of shapes. Dorothy, help me out. What's a circle or roundness imply to you? What's the connotation of that?
Why, I guess I think of something soft and inviting.
Yes, yeah. Circles are often associated with like conventional or normative femininity, right? With organic shapes. They can be associated with things like cycles, the circle of life, yin yang, that kind of stuff. Good. Excellent. Dorothy, what about squares or angles? What do those bring up for you? What do those generate? What do you feel when you hear those?
Oh, I think of a house or a building, something made by a hardworking farmhand.
Yeah, good, great. Squares and lines and angles often give off a more conventionally or normative masculine connotation. Think about the difference between a typical power suit, right, with the angles and the lines, versus a dress which has a circular skirt and which is softer and flowy, perhaps, maybe with more malleable fabric. Right? So these are some traditional views of femininity and masculinity and how they maybe get expressed visually. And then people do things by mixing those up, right? You juxtapose traditional masculinity with traditional femininity and have things that challenge or work against or that sort of stuff. You think of Annie Hall dressing entirely in sort of ties and suits. Although you all probably don't remember Annie Hall. Google it. It's great. Except for Woody Allen, but Google it anyway. At least look at the fashion. So then what about point of view? In literature, the point of view is who is telling the story, right? Is the story in first person? I went to the store, we did this, we did that. Is it in second person? You walk down the hall. You don't know what you're talking about. Is it in third person? He, she, they, them. he was worried. He wondered what would happen. He walked to the door. So point of view in narrative. Then what's point of view in a visual image? It's the perspective we're getting from where the audience or the camera is located, right? So for me, literally the camera's right here. I'm touching it. Meh. It's straight on. It's looking right at me. It might be that the camera would be way above me. It would be shooting from above. And we're not even. I'm below you and you're above me. Maybe the camera would be shooting me from below. So I'm higher than you are now. So in film then and in visual narrative, the audience or the camera is where your audience member's eye line is. That's what we see. Where is that located in relation to the images that you're seeing in the frame of the shot? Okay, I'm going to show you a little video and talk to you a little bit about it as we go through it. All right, so just as a warning, there is some nudity in this clip. So FYI, just letting you know. So I have a little video to show you. I'm going to stop it every now and then and talk to you about some stuff. So this is marked as innocence. And I just want to point out a few different things about this composition, right? Notice how, first off, we are above her. We are looking down on her. The camera is positioned above her and we're looking straight down at her. That puts us in a position of power relative to her. So has less power because we're above her. And that's part of what generates the idea of innocence, is that she's vulnerable, right? But the other thing that helps generate that idea, of course, is the acting, right? Is her smile and her giggling and the fact that she's wearing clothes that look like they're appropriate for a child. They're not sexualizing her in any way. And then there's all these flowers around her and she's laying in the very pink and white flowers. So pink and white are both colors often associated, white in particular, with innocence and purity in Western tradition often, and pink associated with babies, right? Pink and blue is the traditional color of the cisgender baby, right? So she's got the pink and the white put together, which generates this notion of innocence. And then her being yellow, the yellow matching the sort of yellow coloring of the hair, the blonde hair, and the sort of yellow tone of her skin draws all of that together and makes her stand out among the pink and the white. But notice that there's a little bit of that yellow coloring throughout the pink and the white. It's more green, but there's a yellow flavor to it. And all of that links her then with that pink and that white, in addition to her being the center, the focus, the place that we look and we want to look. That gives you a sense of how to start approaching close reading visual narrative. You want to look at the entire frame and what's happening in it. All right, let's look at some more. These are all innocence. Okay, sweetness. Notice a few things about this composition. Notice that the people in the frame are not in the center of this frame. Instead, the focus is on this figure who dominates 2/3 of the frame. This figure only has a teeny little 1/2, and this figure is physically lower than she is in the frame. So this positions her as less important than. Also, we don't even get to see her face, which positions her anonymously in the context of this. She's a servant. For the purposes of this shot, it doesn't matter who she is. What matters is who this figure is here, who the figure reclined in all of her white purity and privilege and the sweet pinkness all around her. So we were talking about traditional femininity. Here's someone who is one of my favorite characters because she utilizes traditional femininity in ways that end up being terrifying. She's surrounded by pink, which implies that she's young and innocent, and yet she's not young, she's older, and she's evil. If you look into her eyes, they are evil, and if you know the story, they're evil. But she's got the trappings of femininity all around her to disguise her evilness. We were talking about traditional femininity before and ways in which circles may be associated with traditional femininity. Notice all the organic shapes in her hair. Look at how circular and twisty they are. Look at the clothing. It's poofy and twisty and curly. Now we're shifting into red. Red has some different connotations than pink and white. Anger comes along with red, passion, violence. Notice in this particular shot, the way in which the red starts to color and splash and take over the white around it. It's tainting it. It's seeding into it and taking it over, as well as visually taking it over. Now, this is a particularly interesting shot for me because it is red, which is passion or anger, but notice how claustrophobic this shot is. We still have someone centered at the frame, but all of this stuff shooting out around him, this figure is very close. It's very close and right there. And for me, it gives the impression of there not being much space. And it makes me feel like tightened in and trapped and claustrophobic and nervous. It's very like, it generates that emotion for me. And the fact that the human face is behind this sort of artificial industrial spaceman suit makes him seem very alien, and I feel disconnected, and maybe he's a little evil the way he sort of got his head tilted down and looking up at me like that. And then yes, red associated with sex and passion. Notice that the it's not just like there's nothing red in this shot, but the lighting itself is red. Here, the red is actually part of the set dressing. It's these beads. The shot itself is got a sort of a blue color. If you notice if you look at the sort of skin tone here. Another shot when we're looking down at the person. Here we're straight on. Something like this, for me, is a very different feeling than a lot of what we just saw. To me, here we are with the yellow where it's kind of, it feels off or slightly weird or slightly different, the way that the particular tone of yellow. For me, this is not a joyful yellow. This is an awkward yellow. This is a yellow that makes me nervous and sort of clashes against this super bright fluorescent white up here that also has, for me, a negative feel, a negative connotation. And then this little dude looks very sad in the middle of all of this with everything around him, because his facial expression and his body language seems very defeated. This is a sad space for me, an awkward, sad, weird space. Now notice a shot like this, for example. Again, we're at the same power level as these characters. We're looking straight on at them. And look at how they are in the foreground and all this beautiful color behind them is in the background. So that to me connotes like fire or danger, and they're moving away or getting away. And it's their silhouette that's important. We don't even have to see their faces. We need to know that they are human figures. And then there's a light, right? Which this is the hope that they're going to lead them forward away from all of the fire and danger behind them. Another shot. Notice how every single one of the shots that we've seen looking straight down has been on a woman. So a female figure, a female character. So that seems to be one of the ways in which we sexualize a character, or we make her vulnerable, is to like look down at her like that. Here's an example where we're looking straight on at the character. Now we're looking up at the character a little bit, although we're mostly straight on. Here, we are looking straight up at the character. The character is the one in power. We are the one in the position of vulnerability. And this is heightened by the two gun barrels that are sticking at us. It's also heightened by the frightening grill the guy has, and the face that he's making as an actor. as well as the fact that he's surrounded by kind of an off, weird yellow color, and that also has bars that kind of collide into his head, which also kind of give him an impression of being off kilter or off a little bit, because he's not quite centered either in the middle of that little awning or whatever it is. All right, so that for me makes me as an audience member feel tense and vulnerable because I'm beneath this guy and he's got the power over me. Here we are looking down at three gentlemen. Instead of being sexualized, it kind of makes them look like silly, awkward, vulnerable. I don't take them seriously. I don't know what's going on with them. Another one looking down at a lady. Here we're looking a little bit up, not a ton, but a little bit up. She's in a very powerful position here with her arms spread wide. It's a position that's sometimes associated with Christ, only she's not being sacrificed. She's the one who's about to bring the destruction. And Disney often uses this green color to signify evil magic as well. Yeah, okay, good. Also, she's wearing this sort of, this obviously witch outfit, but the black then sometimes has connotations of darkness or negativity or evil. Here we're looking up at these creatures. Here, whiteness is signifying remoteness and isolation. Notice all of the organic shapes associated with the fantasy world. There's all these curves and twists and twirls and whirligigs. And the blues and the purples. Notice the cool lighting. So that gave us a little bit of an idea of how we can take a look at various scenes and visual information and generate emotional responses, and that will lead us to develop claims about the text.
Are we almost done here?
Yeah, we're almost done, Dorothy.
I'm oh so tired, and I just want to go home. There's no place like 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 home.